Thirsty for action? Let's crack open the Sunday six-pack.
Let's go to the Week 8 Sunday six-pack. All right. 3-3 week for us last week. 2-1 for me, 1-2 for you. We do, for those new listeners, 2 points for our first two picks, a point for our third, and then a point for our total, which we'll give out in the next section. Bonus point if you sweep all of those. 30-12, Stuck. You got some catching up to do. Let's go. Let's get hot.
About five straight sweeps.
Hey, I mean, it's at least 2 or 3 are doable. I think I got there, so it's definitely doable. But I'm up first this week, and I'm going to say hello, darkness, our old friend, because with my first pick of the Week 8 Sunday six-pack, going with the Cleveland Browns plus 9.5 versus the Baltimore Ravens. Anything over 8, I like in this spot. I think the market is underrating Cleveland. Finally, I think we can finally say the market is truly underrating Cleveland because we don't have to worry about Deshaun Watson, who was efficient last week, but he's been a huge liability, which I'll get to in a second. But before we get into the quarterback, let's look at what's going to be around him. Cleveland got back right tackle Jack Conklin a couple of weeks ago. Jedrick Wills, the left tackle, they got him back about a month ago. So that's big because you were playing DeJuan Jones, James Hudson, Zach Zinter at tackle. In terms of PFF grade, among 79 tackles, DeJuan Jones, 9th worst, Hudson, 8th worst, Zinter, worst of 79. They also activated Pro Bowl guard Wyatt Teller. I don't know if he's going to be back this week, but they didn't just designate him. Yeah, they didn't just designate him. They actually activated him. So he has a good shot to play. So this offensive line could be at least back to average, maybe, because it's been really bad. Of course, they got Nick Chubb back last week, handled, double-digit touches. So that might increase a little bit more this week.
Yeah, it should. He barely touched the ball in the second half. And Stefanski said they wanted to just make sure that he was okay, and he got out of this week unscathed and looked good. So his workload should increase this week.
Yeah, and you're going to need, Baltimore, excellent run defense. We know that. So you're going to need some of that Chubb physicality, to stay on schedule. But I think the real reason that Cleveland is underrated here is because the passing offense could go from one of the worst all time to serviceable, at least. Cleveland's going to start Jameis Winston at quarterback. And that's big because, first of all, DTR, who they had active as a second quarterback last week with Winston as the emergency, if you go look at 80 quarterbacks with at least 150 dropbacks since 2021, DTR is 77th of those 80 in EPA per dropback. Jameis Winston, 21st. You look at 53 quarterbacks with at least 400 dropbacks over that same span. Deshaun Watson, 50th of 53 in EPA per dropback. Jameis Winston, 16th. So I don't think Jameis Winston is even necessarily anything more than average, but he's put up above average EPA per play numbers in, limited action ever since that 30 interception season. And Deshaun Watson, until last week, was one of the literal worst quarterbacks of all time. And this passing offense was one of the worst of all time. So this is big. Now, Njoku, Winston will have him to throw to, even though you traded Cooper. Njoku, 10 of 14 for 76 and a touch last week. Baltimore, bottom 4 in DVOA against tight ends. So should be some matchup advantages there. And then that Baltimore defense on a quick turn, Marlon Humphrey's banged up at corner. So this might be a better spot for Jerry Jeudy. DTR only targeted Jeudy once on 24 dropbacks. Winston, when he came in, targeted Jeudy 36% of the time. So if Humphrey is banged up or misses the game, that's big because Jeudy can go inside and out, as can Elijah Moore, but he's not really a factor these days. But I think that Humphrey injury looms large. And on the other side of the ball, Zay Flowers also a little bit banged up. Baltimore's number 1 receiver. He's dealing with an ankle. Got to quick turn for him as well. And Cleveland's defense getting a lot healthier, getting back to that unit that was top 2 last year. Myles Garrett off the injury report, it looks like. Denzel Ward off the injury report. Juan Thornhill and Grant Delpit, the 2 very good safeties, returned last week. So this Cleveland defense at home, divisional matchup, and just don't underestimate like the hope, like just the like Deshaun. I know they like Deshaun Watson, they said all the right things, but it was just such a struggle. And I think Winston, just by not being Watson or DTR, which they've had to start both of those guys, all but Flacco for those magical 5-6 games, whatever it was. It's just been a struggle. So I think the defense, I think you get a really good effort from the defense. And Baltimore on the quick turn, a little banged up. I think this is just way too many points. And we know that Lamar Jackson struggles a little bit with these larger point spreads. So give me the Cleveland Browns plus 9.5.
Yeah, I played this. Love it. This would have been one of my picks if you didn't take it. Lamar is a favorite of 7+ by the way. 18-1 against the spread, 41.9%. This is not a great spot for the Ravens. They've won 5 straight. They're on a short week for their 2nd straight road game after a bunch of emotional games in a row. Like you look back, like the Bills, the Bengals, the Commanders, the Bucks in prime time. So it could be a little bit emotionally drained. And you mentioned the Browns defense is healthy. They've upgraded now quarterback. They changed play callers, and that was the game plan I was expecting. Playing into their strengths last week against the Bengals until Watson got hurt. And I think Winston now gives them more upside. It's a couple point upgrade. I mean, Watson was dead last in adjusted EPA per play. He was worse than Levis, 34.6% success rate. And this is the first time we get to talk about this in a while. Jameis is a dog. I mean, Jameis is a favorite. You never want to back. He's 8-19 against the spread. As an underdog of more than 3 points, 19-10-1 against the spread, 65.5% covering by 4.5 points per game. So yeah, healthier offensive line. I like the spot here. Browns will show up. This is a divisional game, even with their record. And I do think it'll, with Jameis in the lineup, it'll provide some more juice. And I think that they show up here against the Ravens and keep this one close. I mean, if they play that last week against the Bengals, they play that game 100 times. The Browns win a bunch of them. I mean, Dustin Hopkins had a nightmare day. I mean, how many points did he cost them? A kick return touchdown, a missed field goal, a missed extra point. So yeah, their defense, their healthier defense came to play. They held the Bengals to 4 yards per play. And even with Winston and whatever DTR was doing out there, I think about 11 of 24 with 2 picks, they still outgained the Bengals by 100 yards in that game. So I like it. I think this line is too high. I would have been on it as well. For my first pick and the second overall of the Week 8 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Miami Dolphins -3 at home against the Arizona Cardinals. I'd go up to -125 on this. Doesn't really matter for the contest, but I think the Dolphins are significantly undervalued here. I'm assuming Tua is going to come back. But with my injury luck, Tua will get ruled out somehow, and it'll be Tim Boyle in there, I assume.
Don't even go there.
So now you can expect a little bit of a drop off. You can price that in with Tua coming back after such a long layoff, coming back from a concussion. But maybe half point. Before the season, when these two teams were healthy, I would have had this spread around a touchdown. And Miami's been so bad on offense that I think you're getting a lot of value here. I mean, Tua and their offense is fully healthy now across the board. Offensive line, weapons, backfield. Tua obviously knows how to run this offense. And how do you slow down Tua? You got to get pressure on him. Cardinals can't do that. And they just lost Gardak too. I mean, they've lost now 2 edge rushers, 2 of their interior defensive linemen. I mean, even Murphy Bunting, doesn't really matter that much. He got hurt. I mean, their secondary's bad. They can't get any pressure. This defense is horrendous. It's the only unit in the league allowing a success rate over 50%. It's in a league that the Panthers are in. For what it's worth, Miami's defense is actually going under the radar, and they've played some bad quarterbacks, but they're one of 5 teams allowing a success rate under 40%. And maybe they get Agba back. Maybe they get Holland back. They could get bit healthier. And it's also just a terrible spot for the Cardinals. Short week, traveling across the country. And they're kind of fool's gold what the Cardinals have done this year. I mean, they're 4-3. Excuse me, what are the Cardinals? 3-4?
3-4. Yeah.
3-4. They had a 1-point win and a comeback against San Francisco because the 49ers had their kicker get hurt. And they had a 2-point win over the Chargers. They should have lost that game. I mean, you go back to the first half, they throw a pick, the pick gets fumbled, and they recover it. The Chargers go down the field, hit a long touchdown, fumbled through the end zone. Later in that game, the Cardinals have a touchdown drive where they fumble, and it somehow they recover. They recovered all 3 key fumbles in the game. I thought Harbaugh made some bad coaching decisions on 4th down late in that game as well. But that was another 2-point win. And, their one really convincing win came against the Rams in just a great spot when the Rams were basically playing with their practice squad. Their other losses came by 28, 21, 6, and 7. And this is when you want to play Tua and the Dolphins. When they play a bad team, this is what the Dolphins do. When healthy, they dominate bad teams. Tua is 17-10 against the spread versus teams under 500, 63%, covering by almost 5 points per game. As a favorite in those spots, 15-7 against the spread, 68%. So there's just no reason why this Dolphins offense shouldn't cook against the Cardinals, even if there's a little rust and a slight production dip out of Tua. Cardinals can't cover. They can't get pressure. They have injuries on the defensive side of the ball. So, yeah, and it's just a good spot situationally. So I like the Dolphins here, playing 3 at home. I mean, I think this line should be closer to like 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think the big advantage for the Dolphins here is they're explosive. Like now, if Tua is back, they're explosive. They can get ahead of the Cardinals. And the Cardinals, really what's kind of going a little bit under talked about is that if the Cardinals can't run, it gets very shaky. I mean, Kyler Murray hasn't eclipsed 214 passing yards since week 2. That was the only time he did it. I mean, he's not delivering the ball downfield consistently.
Harrison again looks like disinterested on many routes.
Right. He's not separating on every, like, consistently. Like, it's sometimes there, sometimes it's not. Wilson, will look good for a play or two, but he's not a guy that you can, get 10 targets every week to. Dortch comes and goes. I mean, McBride, he puts up volume, but I was looking at his efficiency numbers. He's kind of like league average yards per target. He's not really providing a massive edge. He's just somebody for Kyler to throw to. And he's a great tight end, but something's not unlocked, and it has to be, you have to start looking at Kyler, because you look at Cliff with Jaden Daniels, and not taking anything away from Jaden Daniels, but I mean, now we're just getting Kyler whole new system, second year in the system, full off season, no injury, and it's still just not looking good. It's not looking good to me.
Dolphins also they're getting pressure up the middle and the interior. That's one of the reasons why their defense, I think, has been underrated and grades out pretty well. That's one way that you really shut down Kyler.
Yeah, 5'10".
Yeah. I think this is just a great spot and a good matchup for the Dolphins. There's really any path they want to take to offense, they should get. Look at the Chargers last week. What did Herbert throw for?
390, 380, something like that.
With who? His top 2 receivers out. He's throwing to Fajoku again.
David Rager.
And
Exciting.
Will Dissly going nuts.
Yep. 349. Sorry, we overestimated. 349.
349. Like, with a bunch of nobodies. So, yeah, the Dolphins should cook here. They need a game like this too. And by the way, even with Snoop last week, they should have beat the Colts.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, it ruined our money line parlay.
Yeah, they should have won that game. Of course, I had some Dolphins.
Of course, that wasn't your fault. That was ridiculous. I mean, the Colts couldn't do anything all game. It was crazy.
I mean, neither could the Bengals, and they cover 6.5 on the road. But it might not be my fault. But
T. Higgins playing well.
You either win or you lose. I mean, they held it. The Browns shut them down until a couple turnovers and the D worn down. But you either get to the window or you don't. And I did not with the Dolphins. But they played well again. Their defense is
they played well on one side of the ball.
Well.
Yeah. On that side. Yeah, they I don't think Tyreek and Waddle was their first target somewhere in the third quarter. It was just absurd. All right, for my second pick and the third overall in the Week 8 Sunday 6-pack, going with the Dallas Cowboys plus 4.5 at the San Francisco 49ers, and this comes down to the spot. The Cowboys coming off a bye, had to sit around for 2 weeks, listening to all the talking heads call them soft, listening to their former Hall of Fame quarterback calling out the receivers, just Jerry Jones getting into arguments with media, they're just kind of chomping at the bit here, ready to go. Meanwhile, San Francisco, you mentioned it earlier. What's their offense going to be this weekend? But Michael Parsons has a chance to return. Jerry Jones says he's a game time decision. I feel like Jerry Jones is kind of desperate, and I don't know how realistic it is for Micah to play, but he's got a shot. But let's assume he doesn't play. We already know CMC is still out for the Niners. Brandon Ayuk is now out, torn ACL. So that's their wide receiver 1 and their top running back. Just looking at Brock Purdy, who's been kind of winging it and making some bad decisions, but bailing himself out just by, getting some crazy luck and some crazy throws down. I mean, he's great. Don't get me wrong. I love Brock Purdy, but it's been a little shakier with, the receivers in and out of the lineup. And I haven't loved the decision making at all times from him. And I haven't loved even some of the play call. But Ayuk and McCaffrey alone, that's over a third of Brock Purdy's career targets, yards, and touchdowns. If Debo misses, and he was in the hospital into Monday with pneumonia, so I mean, hopefully he gets better as soon as possible. But if he misses,
might be out a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean that's nothing. Yeah, pneumonia is nothing to joke about. You need lungs to play football. So if Debo misses, now you're talking about over half of Purdy's career production in targets, yards, and touchdowns.
And just the flexibility of the offense without Debo, it's a whole different offense. We've seen that in the past. And now without Ayuk, maybe still no Jennings. Kittle's banged up. Conley, the number 4, is banged up. You could literally, you could have
4 points downgrade, I think. Pearsall came straight off his first game coming back from getting shot. This dude runs a route on 84% of the dropbacks. They talked about, he was struggling a little bit with conditioning, but he had to be out there. Targeted 5 times for 21 yards, 3 catches for 21 yards, 7 yards per catch, 4.2 per target. The separation just wasn't there. So
Pearsall and Cowling were the 1-2 last week.
Yeah, Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell kind of vomited on the goal line, but Purdy got the touchdown instead.
Pearsall, Cowling, right? The 1-2 last week had 0 career catches.
Yep.
Last week.
Yep, and then you got. I mean, Ronnie Bell drops everything. He was at one point he was benched. I think he was a healthy scratch at one point. Now he may have to be in the rotation. But even Jennings, Jennings had some great games when guys were out early this year. But he has a hip injury, and we didn't when we recorded last week. We didn't even know Jennings was going to be out. I don't even know if he was on the injury report at this time last week. So
typical.
I'm not saying right. I'm not gonna count him as 100%, even if he is active. Chris Conley cannot separate. Like you saw it last week. They were throwing routes that they would normally throw to Ayuk or Debo to Chris Conley, and it just wasn't there. So I think this is a big problem, and this is when you start to see Brock Purdy look a little bit more human. This guy has just been MVP caliber, flirting with 9 yards an attempt his entire career. I think that's his exact career average, actually. So taking nothing away from him. But this is a game where, especially because everyone's so down on the Cowboys, if Brock Purdy struggles, and I think he will, everyone's going to start talking about this system quarterback thing again. And it's not true. I think Brock Purdy does have talent, and he does add to this offense in a way that Jimmy G and all these other guys never did, with some of his movement, some of the things, and just some of his accuracy and things like that. But this is when you start to see bad Purdy. We saw it for a stretch last year when all the guys were out. Around midseason, I think there was that Browns game, that Vikings game back to back, and I think there was another loss in there. But I think
it wasn't anywhere close to that what this is.
Yeah, exactly. So the only positive is you got Trent. As long as Trent Williams doesn't get ejected again, at least you have him. But they'll probably be better than last week, just based on the fact that at least Shanahan can game plan for this. But Shanahan. He's getting a little cute and doing some odd things. I think he's going like too deep in his bag sometimes, and it's not really working out with the guys he has on the field and with the way Purdy kind of makes decisions. And like sometimes there's just like not the right hot reads, and sometimes there's just odd route combinations and weird personnel running the route. So I don't know what's up with Shanahan. He needs to simplify it, but it's just a tough spot here, especially with the Cowboys coming off a bye and really being able to kind of dig in here. And you look at the Dallas offense, I still think this Dallas offense is decent. Dak Prescott getting a lot of flack in the media, but CeeDee Lamb is, he started the year a little bit slow, wasn't playing as many snaps. I think you get a great effort from Lamb after he got called out from, dogging it on routes from Troy Aikman. Tolbert's ascending. Turpin has some, if you get the ball in his hands, he has some pop. So Ferguson is back. So I still think this, and they're using Dowdle over Zeke, which is great for their, rushing efficiency and for their catching out of the backfield. So I think Dallas offense will be fine here. They had a couple of weeks to game plan. Remember last year, Mike McCarthy off the bye actually did some really good things. I think they stomped the Rams like 43-20. And that's been a trend with Mike McCarthy off the bye, 13-3-1 against the spread, 81% in his career, covering by 6 points per game, according to Action Labs, 3-1 against the spread with the Cowboys. And Dak Prescott on the road off a loss is 11-4-1 against the spread, 74%, including 3-1 on the road as a dog off a loss. And you look at underdogs historically, 500 or better. Cowboys are 3-3. Underdogs 500 or better that scored fewer than 10 points in their last game, which the Cowboys did in that loss to the Lions. 77-39, 66% against the spread over the last 2 decades, covering by just under a field goal per game. So I think Dallas gets its revenge for that 42-10 thumping and all those playoff losses here. Just a really tough spot for the Niners. So give me the Cowboys plus 4.5. It's looking like unless their injury situation drastically improve, it's looking like anything above a field goal situation. But I would prefer to get at least a 4 for now, just because it's still Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would have this at around
Six-ish,
around a touchdown if both teams are fully healthy. I really think that with all these injuries, it's close to like a 3 to 4 point.
It's over. Yeah, it's at least a field goal, I think.
And then Cowboys coming off of a bye, like this spread. I also like the under here. I think points should come in a premium. Like the Cowboys can't really run the ball, which is how you want to attack San Francisco. I do expect San Francisco's defense to show up, knowing their offense is so shorthanded. San Francisco, they're going to play slow. I expect them to lean on the run game, which you can do a bit against the Cowboys. The Cowboys defense also should be healthier, even if Parsons doesn't come back. They should get some other key guys back. I think the Dallas defense responds after that. And how can you, I mean, it's just going to be like, look at the weapons San Francisco's throwing to. So I think there's some advantages for both defenses in this matchup. Should be lower scoring. So I think the points are even more valuable in that game script. So yeah, I think if all the guys who I think aren't going to play don't play, I think this should be around a field goal. And I would assume it probably trends. I think the total probably keeps coming down and the spread keeps coming down, unless the injury news gets somehow much better, which I don't envision it as of this moment.
Oh, yeah. And one more thing. Let me just because I know you're a special teams guy, San Francisco's down to the number 3 kicker, Anders Carlson, who's missed half of his career field goals from 40 to 49. So just another reason.
Missed an extra
down
point.
Has Brandon fucking Aubrey, probably the best kicker in the game right now. Like with Tucker should be in a little bit more human. So, I mean, yeah, just another edge for Dallas here.
Yeah, Dallas
Small
is great
edge, but an
special
edge.
teams. San Francisco's special teams are bad.
Yeah, turf.
I agree with you there.
All right.
All right.
We go next.
For my second pick and the 4th overall, the Week 8 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Jacksonville Jaguars plus 4.5 at home against the Green Bay Packers. On the surface, it's not the greatest spot for Jacksonville. They played 2 straight games in London, coming back home, but they were in the spot last year, and they, I think, beat the Colts by 2 touchdowns. So they're familiar with this spot. I actually think it's a worse spot for Green Bay. You have that emotional, thrilling win at home over Houston, and you have like the Bears on deck. Now you're going down to Jacksonville. It's sort of a sleepy spot in Florida. So, I think the Jags can carry some of the momentum over from last week's win. And I think the Packers defense has some regression coming. I liked the new aggression under new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. I think it matches their personnel, but they're playing above their heads right now. I mean, this is a team, early down success rate, 31st. EPA per play on early downs, 30th when you remove turnovers. And man, they've benefited from turnovers as much as any team in the league. For what it's worth, the Jags are 11th and 7th in those 2 categories. And they got Tyson Campbell back. It's massive. Been playing without him, trying to play man coverage with just a bad group of corners for a good portion of the season. And it just hasn't worked out. So now they're much healthier on the defensive side of the ball. And I just don't think it can be overstated how important getting Campbell back is. I mean, the Packers closed as a 2.5-point favorite at the Rams practice squad. Now they're laying 4.5 here against a relatively healthy Jags team. Jags offense metrics are pretty good. They need to still figure out the red zone. Maybe that's just like a Jags problem, I think, but that tends to just be a variance stat. So yeah, I mean, the Jacksonville defense with Campbell is much better. They're good against the run. They're middle of the pack success rate. They have some turnover luck coming their way. They haven't been able to generate any. And the Packers defense is vulnerable. They're living off of turnovers week in and week out. I think this spread should be a field goal. So I'll take the 4.5 points at home.
Yeah, when I project it out, I can't get to the 4.5. So I'm not mad at you for playing this, but in terms of the variance, I think this Packer team actually might be a little bit of a sleeping giant. I mean, you mentioned the turnovers, and yes, Packers have forced a lot of turnovers, but Jordan Love's thrown in his 5 starts, he's thrown 1, 3, 1, 1, and 2 interceptions. He hasn't had a clean start yet, but he's also thrown multiple tutties in all 5 of his starts. And I mean, I'll say this about the Packers. It just scares me a little with this Jag secondary. I know Campbell's back, but the Packers have all their receivers healthy. Their offensive scheming looks immaculate on film. And some of the throws Jordan Love is making, even though he is turning the ball over, are just absolutely ridiculous. So this just kind of scares me. It's kind of it might be like walking into like the way I walked into the Saints scoring 51. No, the Bucs scoring 51 of the Saints. I had the Bucs a couple weeks ago. I hope that doesn't happen for your sake and the sake of this pod, but I really like what I've seen out of this Packer offense. So I do worry about that Jacksonville pass defense because they're dead last, 32nd in DVOA. Campbell does help that, but the Packers have 4 good receivers, a good tight end, and now a running back who can catch touchdowns. So I don't know how the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to get stops aside from Jordan Love interceptions, which this is a luck ranking game though. And those games have hit, 63%. So I think the luck differential between these 2 teams is 26. So you got that. There are some things like I definitely did think about playing Jags, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little worried about this Pack offense here. I don't think they've fully hit their stride, and I think Jacksonville's gonna struggle to get stopped, so they're gonna need some luck. But yeah, 4.5, I get it. Is this a humidity game? How humid is it gonna be?
Let's see.
That
It would
that's
be-
that I think that could really help kind of slow down this. It needs to be a slog. I don't think you want to get in a shootout with the Packers here. I think it's like in the 60%. Is that I don't even
60%,
Yeah,
85
that's high,
degrees.
right? 60,
It's not
70s.
overwhelming, but yeah,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
high.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely a lot working in your favor, but I just no play for me on that one. Just
Muggy is considered
back.
like Muggy is like between 55 and 65. Oppressive is like over 65.
Okay. So it's flirting with it. It could get there. And there, for what it's worth, like I said, luck ranking game, those at over 60%. And we've tracked a bunch of sharp action on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think this is one of the most sharp bet games. Let's see. We got, as we record this, we have 80%, over 80% of the bets and 97% of the money on the Green Bay Packers. But we have tracked 8 sharp moves on the Jaguars. So the fact that 97% of money's on the Packers and this line went like from 4.5 to 4 at some spots. So this is you are on the right side.
Well, that sounds like
we hope.
Every bet that I've been on in the past 2 weeks. So there's no home dog, a sharp home dog.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
whole world's on the other side. It's got no chance.
I mean, just real quick, because I mean, this is important for betting, in making these picks. Like, do you think there's something tangible further disintegrating with home field advantage, or is this just kind of a typical randomness that you see in like a 7-week sample size?
Yeah, I mean, I think home field will continue to come down. I mean, I don't have home field. I decrease it little by little every year. So I do think that it's coming down, but the success we've seen with road favorites over the past month, it's just random. I mean, like you're talking what, 18 to 20 bets. Like there's going to be so much noise in that. There's also been like just tons of injuries and like there's just random stuff that happens in games that so I do think that there's something to home field just continuing to disintegrate, but this stretch has been just an outlier.
All right, for my third and final pick of the week, number 8 Sunday 6-pack, the 5th overall, I'm going with the Chicago Bears -2.5 at the Washington Commanders. Now, it's a little risky, admittedly, because Jaden Daniels hasn't been officially ruled out. He didn't practice Wednesday. Most sources think he's going to miss at least a week. It's just he's too important, and it's a rib kind of a weak injury. It can affect throwing motion, things like that. He is a guy who runs, takes some hits. So I do think. Like,
are we sure Daniels matters? Maybe it's just Cliff after what Mariota did last week.
I mean, I'll get to that, but I was gonna say, like, this is not for the faint of heart. There's a chance I could look really stupid and he plays, and this line is gonna flip, and I might have to bet the Bears again as a dog. But I like Chicago. I'm higher on the market than Chicago. I know you've been actually lower on the market than Chicago, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. But when I watch Chicago on film, and I'm not an Eberflus fan. I'm kind of agnostic on Waldron. Never saw the hype, but also didn't think he's like terrible or anything. But this team offensively, after those first 2 weeks where it was just nightmarish, I think Caleb Williams averaged 4 yards an attempt, and the goal line situation was horrible. Just everything you could think of. Komet wasn't playing enough. Everett was playing too much. Every week, they seem to correct their most glaring issues. Now, it would be nice if they just didn't have these glaring, decision-making, schematic things in the first place, but they've been improving a lot. And I think a lot of people are just kind of looking at them as like, oh, it's just the same old Justin Fields Bears with the same old coaching staff and, some shiny new toys, but it's still, they haven't beat anybody. And I don't think that's fully true. I think they have had an easy schedule, and it's helped, but that does build confidence in a rookie quarterback. You see Caleb Williams playing a lot better. First 2 starts, 4 yards an attempt, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Last 4 starts, 7.9 yards an attempt, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks. And he started to run more in that last game too. They started to incorporate. So every week they're kind of incorporating, I think, more and more on Caleb's plate and kind of switching things up. And I actually like some of the pass game schemes that they were, especially in that Jacksonville game. I mean, I thought Waldron was in his bag in that one. That play to commit, even the play to the into to DJ Moore was I think interesting schemed play, because it was just kind of it got more one-on-one, and if Caleb makes a throw, that's a touchdown. So I like some of the things they're doing. I think the final step for them is getting Rome Odunze more involved, and usually see rookies more involved off the bye. I think he's actually get more explosive and getting more separation than Moore and Allen right now. So I think this offense still has upside. I still think they could get better in the run game. There's still some interior linemen kind of missing some things and whatnot, but the run game has improved. The goal line running has improved with Johnson for Herbert. Swift has gotten it going. Williams is running more. Williams is the schemes in terms of the routes down the field are better. Allen's back. The team should be healthier in offense. Defense, they're number 7 in DVOA. We'll see about some of the guys, some of the guys in the secondary. Brisker, I think, is still in protocol, which is unfortunate. And I think Gordon still is not practicing. But I mentioned it last time, when they played Jacksonville, they still got studs in the secondary with Bayard and with Jalen Johnson, who was one of the best corners in the league since the start of last season. So Washington has one really good receiver, Terry McLaurin. So I don't think you need all your guys in the secondary to come back if you don't have Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was just so freaking good. You go back to 2018, 87 quarterbacks have at least 250 dropbacks. Jaden Daniels is number 1 of those 87 quarterbacks in EPA per dropback. Now that doesn't mean I'm saying Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback of all time or he's better than some of the other quarterbacks on the list. It just means that's how above their heads this team was playing. Like, this team, it's just unsustainable how good he was. There's a big gap between Jaden Daniels and that second place guy on that list, which is Drew Brees. So you look at Marcus Mariota now has to come in, and the Panthers are a joke, so we're not going to look at that game. But it's Marcus Mariota. We know who Marcus Mariota is. He's the guy who threw off his ass backwards, literally ass backwards in a game a couple years ago when he was on the Falcons. Almost got an ass backwards pick 6. So don't respect him. Don't respect Cliff without Jaden Daniels. This Washington, don't really respect this Washington receiving core. Olamide Zaccheaus leads them in targets per route run. Zach Ertz, I mean, like him as a cheap fantasy streamer and stuff, but at this stage of his career, he's not without Daniels and without a plus quarterback. I don't think he's adding a ton. So if Daniels is out, I think this is where everyone's screaming Washington due for regression. Their 64% scoring rate on drives leads the league by 14%. The league leader each year is usually below 50%. It's rare the number 1 team in scoring rate per drive on offense cracks 50%. Washington's at 64. Where do you think that regression is going to come? In a Marcus Mariota start? I think so. So I think the Bears a little bit underrated on offense because I think they're getting better, and I think they'll be even better this week. Washington defense is terrible still. 23rd in DVOA. They got a lot of pressure against bad O-lines, but I don't think they're going to do a ton here. And Daron Payne is out. And Dorrance Armstrong, he's a little banged up. I think he'll be back, but is he 100%? I don't know. Front doesn't look great. The secondary is terrible. So yeah, I think this is just another one of these matchups where Chicago lucks into catching a team at the right time, just like they caught the Rams practice squad and the Jaguars without Campbell and some of their guys. Like, I just think this is another spot. So going with Chicago -2.5. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I need more info on Daniels, and look, the Bears are gonna potentially luck out again. They have been improving. I've upgraded them a bit, but yeah, they played the Panthers, who were missing their entire team gets hurt during the game too. We know how bad the Panthers are. The Jags had injuries on defense. The Rams practice squad. The Colts had injuries. They lost that game.
But let's just look at Washington's defense. Is Washington's defense any different from those?
I don't know. I mean, Washington's defense has surprised me. I've upgraded
Dan Quinn.
them a
I
bit.
will say, I have respect for Dan Quinn, and what he does on defense. But I mean, talent wise, Washington's right there.
I mean, look,
metrics of all those
Washington's
guys, all those
held
defense.
Arizona to 14, Cleveland to 13.
Okay.
Carolina, they shut down. I thought Carolina was going to move the ball in that game. They were not able to do anything.
I think we all thought Carolina was going to be better. We all got to eat that. So I'm not.
I mean, Carolina's offense under Dalton had been decent.
For one game against the Raiders, who gave up in week 3. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we got so excited for Dalton because we all were high on the Panthers preseason. I'm gonna just eat that one. That's all. I'll take the responsibility.
I mean, their offense was grading out
on that. I don't think
their
the
offense
Panthers
was grading out
good at all. I think Chuba Hubbard and the line has been good. I think the passing offense was kind of it was like Adoree Jackson on the Giants a couple years ago. It's like a figment of our imagination. It's like Dalton's numbers are actually pretty bad.
Yeah, but I mean, they still got the 24 against Cincy, 20 against Atlanta. So they were able to put up some points. To put up only 7 in that game, with Dalton only threw for 90. I mean, that was so. Yeah. I don't really have any feel on it. The Bears were getting super lucky. They might get lucky again here. I mean, I agree. Washington is one of the worst defenses in the league on paper. They're going to go these last 6. Their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Their last 5 games are going to be the defenses of Washington, Jacksonville, Carolina, Los Angeles, and Indianapolis, all with injuries. Up next, Arizona and New England, all with injuries. Pretty crazy. I have no feel in this game.
One thing I'll say is, shout out to the Action Pro subscription. So, I'm not one of those people that looks at like the money percentages and the bet percentages and makes decisions off that. Like, I have to, scout the game, handicap the game to, arrive at a pick. But I will say it really did help me in particular a lot. And I think it's very helpful to see every week if you can put it in context. But I did kind of use it to gauge what was kind of going on in the market with this game because, obviously the Commanders would have been favored if they were favored, on the look ahead, even with this situation. But the books had Chicago, -1.5 to -2.5, since the Daniels news, and 70% of bets, 79% of money on the Commanders. And yet this line has been creeping upward. So I think, if the fact that sportsbooks are kind of willing to take all that, Commanders action as a dog here and still, moving the line toward the Bears kind of tells me that, like there's, they feel confident with, the fact that Daniels is going to miss. I think it makes sense. So I just wanted to point out that that was kind of part of the calculus in this one. So I do think that we should be safe here, but there's a chance that could be really dumb.
Yeah, week to week, I think Daniels is going to miss, but I haven't.
Week to week means nothing this year. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I've gotten every week to week go against me all year. So we'll see how it plays out. For my third pick in the 6th and final of the Week 8 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Cincinnati Bengals -1.5 at home. Anything under 3 is fine. There's a 1.5 out there right now against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not a believer in this Eagles team. Yes, they destroyed the Giants last week. I'm looking at their body of work over basically the last 16 to 17 games. And I get Joe Burrow here. I mean, I think the Bengals are a couple points better than the Eagles. I'm getting them at home. The more desperate team here. You give me Burrow against a good team. And by the way, I mean, who are people are saying the 2 best teams in the league are right now? The Ravens and Chiefs. The Bengals should have beat them both. Burrow is 16-7 against the spread versus teams over 500, just under 70%. This Eagles defense has holes for days. I think Burrow and these receivers just can efficiently move it on them down the field. Eagles have benefited from some just good scheduling spots and teams that are beat up in the right places. Their offense doesn't look right. There's probably gonna be no Dallas Goedert still. There's no Jordan Mailata. The one thing that gives me a little bit of pause is the Bengals could be without Orlando Brown. He was at practice
Yes.
today,
Big.
but you could have Cody Ford playing tackle, which
Terrible.
isn't
He's
ideal.
terrible. He's terrible.
Yeah, he's
Sorry.
atrocious.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't mean to shit on anyone's career, but I mean, he has not performed up to the expectation of an NFL replacement level tackle, even most of his career.
So I'm hoping Brown can go. He was at practice today, so that hopefully is a good sign. That is the one thing that gives me pause, but the Eagles without their left tackle going up against Hendrickson. Hurts has been horrendous under pressure this year. This offense just looks like the same as it was the end of last year. And last year, you could say, yeah, last week they put up 28 points against the Giants. And Hurts threw for 70 yards in that game. He was under pressure the entire game. Barkley just went off in a revenge spot. And they went 3 for 3 on 4th downs. Hurts hit a bomb to
that was
AJ
a great
Brown
throw.
down the sideline.
That throw actually made me go, oh, like that might have been the best throw I've ever seen him make, just considering the way the pressure was in his face. Like that was that. How many guys make that throw? But I agree. I think I agree with you. But continue.
Yeah, they miss Goddard. They miss Mailata. They still miss Kelsey. Like, the offensive line is insane. They're getting too much pressure. I don't like the way the offense is being called. But this is just simple. Like, give me a desperate Burrow at home, team that's 0-3 at home, that's just had tough luck losses all season. I think the Bengals are the better team. They're at home, and Eagles have some injuries and a vulnerable defense. So I'll take Cincy. I think this line should be a field goal.
I'm kind of in line with this. I go either way with this. I have it a little bit I have it inside of 3. So I do have some thoughts on this game that I'll talk about later in the pod. So I'm not gonna belabor it here, but I could see this one going either way. But let's wrap up the 6-pack, get to our pep talk, and we'll get into our total. So to recap, you got the Dolphins -3, the Jags +4.5, and the Bengals -2. So your quarterbacks, I think you're finally feeling the pressure, man. You're feeling the pressure of these L's.
These teams, one of the things that I have noticed this year in particular is the bottom of the league is way worse than usual. Like the worst teams, and some of that is injuries. But man, and that probably has something to do with some of these home dogs not covering.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With the bad teams that have injuries, they've just been lifeless. There's been less parity this year than in recent years.
Yeah, because I mean,
especially the AFC. The AFC.
I mean, Huntley, the Titans situation, Dolphins situation. I mean, it's just been bad. But I mean, Richardson,
the Browns.
Actually, I shouldn't say Richardson. They've actually been winning. But yeah, the Browns. Because like this time last year, we were back like we were like, oh yeah, Josh Dobbs. We're gonna got some covers off him. I mean, there was
Patriots,
quite a few guys.
Raiders,
Owens. Yeah, I mean, this year. It's kind of just been, and it's crazy because the public really was doing horribly until I think that 1 week where all the road favorites hit. But you would think the public would have been doing a lot better this entire year, because it's just been kind of a lot of the game results, in my opinion, have just been like, don't overthink it, right? It's just been like that. Like I had the week I went 0 on the 6-pack a couple weeks ago. I had like Drake May in his first start against the Texans, like overthought it. We know the Texans can stomp them, even though they hadn't won by margin. Like the Spencer Rattler against a healthy Bucks team, or like a healthy Bucks offense. I mean, it's just, it's just, I think you could just overthink it. But like you said, if those quarterbacks without good quarterbacks,
that's hindsight. We've been doing the same thing. I've been doing the same thing for 20 years, and it works. I mean,
but you have to adapt, because that's part of the fun.
I do think
of
the bottom of the barrel is worse than normal. So I've had to aggressively downgrade some of those teams more than I normally would.
For me, it's just kind of spending more time handicapping potential favorites, that because like me on this pod, I mean, I think neither of us take many favorites, but I probably took favorites like 5% of the time the first like 3-4 years in this pod. I've probably taken them more like 20%, and just in general this year, just because it's just kind of
yeah, I got two or three this week.
Yeah, there were slates where I wouldn't even I would kind of mostly spend time handicapping the potential dogs and not even really look at the favorites. So that's kind of it's been working out so far. But yeah, you definitely have to adjust. But I say that to say Miami -3, Jacksonville +4.5, Cincy -2, Burrow, Lawrence, and Tua. Great quarterback lineup for you. I got Cleveland +9.5, Dallas +4.5, and then the Bears -2.5. So I got Caleb, Dak, and Jameis is probably Trevor Lawrence is probably the worst quarterback. Jameis is probably the worst quarterback we got. So that's pretty good for us here. So let's go 6-0, and that was our NFL Week 8 Sunday 6-pack.